Don't mock. I'm not a fool. And people who know me personally know that I am not a fool. But I won't get into the details of those. I just want people to realize that I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool.
Hey there, it's Tony here, and welcome to episode 72 of the Dumb Leaders podcast. This episode comes in the middle of turmoil. The turmoil that we're experiencing all around the world recently, and I'm really saddened by some of the events that I'm seeing coming across our screens, our social media, our news media. And I really do struggle as to the steps that have been taken that get us to where we are today. I really struggle with that. And I know that many people are struggling or attempting to deal with, how do we move forward from this? How do we progress out of this? Because at the end of the day, we are a progressive society. We are a progressive global people. How do we progress out of this? And it's a question that we cannot seem to stumble upon. It's a question that we cannot look to others to answer. It's a question that we have to ask ourselves. And it's a question based around our own actions, to live in a way that helps build a better life for all people, not just for ourselves. But what I know and what I believe is the way forward is through emotional resilience. Let me just repeat that, emotional resilience. And I find it absolutely compelling that in the world of today, where the concepts of resilience are acknowledged and celebrated, we've got more coaches in the world teaching people the concepts and how to improve emotional intelligence. It's in high demand. People are looking for active ways to be able to build and increase their emotional intelligence because the facts are simple. The research shows that people that are successful have higher levels of emotional intelligence. So I'm really disconnected with the fact that we've got resilience that's celebrated. We've got emotional intelligence skills building in high demand. Yet we've actually been taken to the brink in a world that's been fueled by emotion. So the concepts of resilience and emotional intelligence are indeed concepts that allow us to work through our emotions in a productive way and come up with a response. And I'm really challenged that if what we're seeing is the response and not the reaction, I'm at a loss. We seem to be finding offence. I'm offended by everything. We are triggered by everything. The world is being fueled by emotions and feelings. And unfortunately, it's dark emotion. The positive emotions have become a casualty of the crisis that we face in the world. Our positive emotions have become a casualty of the crisis. And to my mind, it really is a time for empathy, understanding, tolerance, and love, and emotional resilience. Now, I find some things offensive. I know that may be very hard to believe, but I find some things offensive. I find some things in life distasteful. That's my own perspective on the world. But I don't want to impose my feelings, my emotions on the way that others live their life. That's not my role. If I find something offensive, if I find something distasteful, guess what? I don't watch it. I don't read it. I don't look at it. I don't fuel my own negative emotions. And I'll take this to a really dumb spot. I might not like fishing, right? I don't like the concept of fishing. I don't like the boredom that comes with fishing. I don't like fishing. But I'm not going to put out a call. I'm not going to write. I'm not going to agitate. I'm not going to speak about the need to stop people fishing because it's something that I don't like. Because every single one of us is unique. Yes, we've got our patterns of behaviour. We have our own upbringing. We have our own conditioning. And these things build our perspective. And when we can truly understand and appreciate our differences, when we truly get to know and understand people, when we truly come to the table with love and not in darkness, is when we'll find a world that's a better place. But another couple of things that I know, erasing history is not the way forward, or slanting history is not the way forward. Statue toppling has become a thing. You know, whether it's the white settlers that we have here that came to Australia, our early explorers. In America, it's the historic figures that have been tainted with the slave trade. In the UK, it's Winston Churchill. It seems all the rage to vandalise and topple statues of some people that have done some pretty positive things in the past. Imagine where the UK would be if it wasn't for Winston Churchill. Just sit back and think and ponder. But because of some dark history, because of some words that he's uttered, he's suddenly the epitome of racism. If it wasn't for Churchill, where would the UK be today? And this is where the ridiculous is. We try and slant history in a way that's just not right. Our emotion is being fueled by what we see as one or two negative aspects in a person's life. And we're ignoring the good. We're ignoring the good. And we're activated emotionally by the negative. History can't be erased. It happened. What we can do is learn from it. And education is the way forward. But the education needs to be a balanced view of history. The good, the bad, the groundbreaking, the atrocities. It needs to be balanced. It can't be weighted to the negative. I mean, what does this say about us as the upbringing of all these things that happened in our past? If we were to be defined by that, my God, none of us would ever be able to sleep at night. Just remember this, right? Even Hitler left the world with some positives. Now, before you jump down my throat, even Hitler left the world with some positives. His engineers were all found sanctuary in the United States after the war. And a lot of the technology and the engineering advancements that happened in Nazi Germany are what we benefit from that today. But his views on the master race were abhorrent. They were horrible. And they should never be celebrated. The fact that 6 million Jews were murdered during the Nazi regime is not a cost for advancement. It is not. Nothing in history comes close to this Holocaust. Nothing. And the lessons have been learnt. The lessons should have been learnt. We still have white supremacists. We still have people that celebrate Nazis. I don't know why. I've got no concept of how anyone can celebrate an atrocity like what we saw with the Jewish people in the Nazi regime of World War II. I just have no concept of that. The lessons should have been learned. Erasing history is not the answer. But neither is censorship. And we've seen social media platforms become increasingly strident in their terms and conditions. They're deplatforming people spreading dangerous views. Dangerous views in their eyes. They still put up with those flat earthers, don't ask me why. But they're deplatforming people that they believe are providing some dangerous views. And in many ways, I'm going to support this. Because ultimately, it is their platform. Ultimately, it is their platform. They have the right to choose who's on it and who's not, and what can be shared. Just as you have the right not to be on the platform, or not to pay them money to be on the platform. They have the right to choose, but we also have a right to choose. You know, we've seen age-old TV shows deplatformed. It seems to be the word of the podcast, deplatformed, from UK TV, Netflix, just to name a couple. And I find this really sad. Again, it's their platform, they've got the right, but we've also got the right not to subscribe to their services. And what it insinuates to me is that they are now the judge of the purveyor of the good and the right. And potentially they're insinuating that I don't have the necessary intelligence, and nor do you, to determine what is current, what is right, and what is wrong. They are becoming the censor. Censorship won't work. You know, again, I'm offended by many things on TV. Absolutely, but I don't watch them. I choose not to watch them. And I do not have the right to force others not to watch. I would, however, suggest that maybe the way forward here is that we can create a new type of rating system that advises people that what they're about to see is outdated, maybe even offensive to some in the current world. The views and concepts outlined in this show are no longer reflected in society. Maybe. Please use viewer discretion. Maybe there's an opportunity for ratings, so that some of these shows, once again, we learn from these shows. We learn from these shows. We learn how offended people were. We learn how hurt people were. But can I tell you, you also choose to be offended. If I knew something was going to offend me, I don't watch it. Why would I waste my time on a negative emotion like that? I want to drive forward. I want to drive forward in life. I want people to drive forward. Why would I waste time being offended? We are better than that. We are better than that. We are better than having forced censorship placed upon us. That's what's happening. So what is the way forward? Currently, we've got legislation in place for things like anti-discrimination, racial vilification, equal opportunity. These things are in place now. But we still have issues. We still have people digging up this pain from the past. We've come a long way from slave traders in America. We've come a long way from white settlement here in Australia. But when we listen to some, we're still in those days. We have come a long way. We have legislation in place. We have regulations in place. And what we do see is that we have this binary thought process. We're either right or you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. And depending on what side you sit is the way that you tend to go about life. It's the way you view things. I'm right, my views are right, and your views are wrong. We generalise and we paint the brush. Everyone's a racist if they utter a word like all lives matter, suddenly that's become racist. I don't get that. I'm sorry. I understand Black lives matter too. Of course they matter. Asian lives matter. Can I share a little piece of perspective here? So people have their own perspective, their own perception on the world, right? But whether you accept that is our challenge. So I understand that there are people of race and there are people in minorities who believe or who have suffered racism, extreme racism in some cases. But I also understand that there's a perspective on the racism. Okay? And sometimes we believe someone's being racist because they've looked at us funny. Looked at us funny. You know, let me share a story of perspective. If I'm walking down a dark alley to get somewhere and I come across a couple of young, well-dressed African American people, I'm probably going to be a little bit nervous. Well-dressed. If I come across a white person that's well-dressed, I'm probably going to become a little bit nervous. Right? So I'm a little bit nervous if I see someone who conforms with potentially who I believe that I am. I'm still going to be a little bit nervous. But if I walk down that same alleyway and there's a gang of people, it could be a gang of white supremacists, it could be a gang of rednecks with their AK-47s, it could be a gang member of African Americans, it could be a gang of Asians, it could be a gang of white skateboarder youths, you know. My nervousness has just shot up through the roof, right? In any of those situations. So I'm nervous if I see anyone else, and I'm in fear if I see someone that doesn't conform with my thought process around what a good person looks like. Think about that. That's not being racist. That's being real. The old white boy with the AK-47 is far more threatening to me than the gang of African American youths. So this is the reality that we face. Everyone has their perspective on life. Everyone has their perspective on life. And dependent on circumstance, dependent on context. Now that person that looked at you funny in the train, in commute on the way to work, might have been suppressing in some gas. The last thing you would want to be doing if you're in public transport is to let one go, isn't it? In respect of, you know, the gaseous build-ups, and you don't want to fart on public transport. There you go. But if someone's holding one back, maybe their facial expressions get strained. Maybe you take that as being, oh, they're a bit sus of me. May not. We've lost this ability to empathise with people where they are, what they're going through. You know, and I think that's really sad. I really do believe that's sad. Because where we've ended up is Black Lives Matter. We've ended up with white guilt. We've ended up with all lives matter. And we've ended up with white privilege, depending on which side of the fence that you sit on. And if you don't agree with any of those statements, all of a sudden you're in the wrong with the people that believe in that statement. Try and understand why that statement came into effect. Try and understand where that statement comes from. And if you don't agree with it, it doesn't mean the other person's wrong. It's just that they have a different perspective. And if you ever want to change someone's perspective, it is about influence. It's about conversation. It's about understanding. You know, we this massive thing at the moment of the police being defunded in America. That's not an answer. Who seriously, who would want to live in a society with no law and order? None. Every society through time has always had some method of law, some method of order. And now, in our ever-enlightened state, we aim to get rid of it. Now, I'm sorry, America, if any of those cities that are seriously defunding the police force is probably a city that will never be on my itinerary to visit, ever. So all those tourists that come to America, my God, why would you go to a place that has no police force? Good luck with that. But the point I guess that I'm trying to make is that we've come a long way, right? We've got processes in place and we have social expectations, and yet we're still not happy with the journey that we've come so far because we still keep dragging up the past. And education may be the answer, but balanced education is the answer. It's not about swinging education to one side of history or the other. It is about sharing both sides of history. Balanced education is the only hope. Because when it swings too far, can I tell you, I was watching a right-side conservative YouTube video and he was bemoaning and bitching about the fact of some of the things being taught in the education system. You know, the right side of politics took a stand when people took a knee, right? There's been some objectivity based around how do we get our message across. Now, the reality is taking a knee hasn't hurt anyone, hasn't killed anyone. Placing some educational balance into the equation so that we're not just hearing about the heroics from the slave trade day or the people that built a nation, we're also hearing from the other side of the fence. I think that's important. I think that's important because the world's not binary. It isn't black, it isn't white. Everyone's made mistakes in their life. You've made mistakes in your life. We are all part. We are all descendant from all these people that made all these mistakes. Yet we expect the world to be perfect now. It isn't black, it isn't white. There's a lot of grey. And my call to action is to come to each person you meet with an open mind and an open heart. And that we take the opportunity to listen, to understand. That's when will make a difference. Because when we treat everyone with love and understanding, we truly can become better leaders, and we're all leaders in this particular world at this particular moment in time. Because the world needs leadership. So we need to listen, to understand. We need to be open. We need to be transparent. And we need to be the example. Thanks for tuning in to episode 72. What is the way forward for the Dumb Leaders podcast? Don't forget, check out dumbleaders.com for more lessons from lousy leaders. I shall see you next time.
Don't mock. I'm not a fool. And people who know me personally know that I am not a fool. But I won't get into the details of those. I just want people to realize that I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool.